Hello, my name is host Eric. I'm the host talking with famous people. I'm here with famous people Hami slash Akira, Omnia, Ott, Nihil, and Unify. And we're talking about public policy stuff. Uh, Hami issued a challenge to non aggression principle, saying it's predicated upon property rights, therefore invalidates itself. Uh, we hammered out this issue of sort of land monopolies, which are a matter of concern, I agree. And now we're talking about the actual ability of the world to change. So, Ami says the state would never allow that localized approach. It's inherent in the state to act in a coercive manner. And my basic position is that's quitter talk. I agree that historically the state consistently shows itself prone to favoring coercive mechanisms, prone to the same fallacies again and again, in which it believes that by doing something it's solving problems, even if the thing it's doing has no solvency. I think it consistently makes the same mistake again and again in terms of failing to account for its own coercive actions in the cost-benefit analysis for its utilitarian justifications. I think the problem is that when government makes these utilitarian justifications, they're too distant from the people that they're making them about. The local communities don't try to punish their community members for stuff that doesn't actually affect the community. And that to the extent that they did, their neighbors wouldn't allow it. I think that there's a real concern that's justified that government is positioning itself to be immune to these sort of challenges through a set of protocols so complex and Kafkaesque that it's a joke, and it's a joke nobody seems to be able to note the hilarity of. Namely, it's a clothless emperor that people accept as being finally besplendored in clothing. The world's natural resources are initially unowned or belong equally to all, and it's legitimate for anyone to claim exclusive private ownership of these resources to the detriment of others. Thus, private appropriation is legitimate only if everyone can appropriate an equal amount, or if those who appropriate more are taxed to compensate those who are therefore excluded from what was once common property. Well, it was never common property. That's your mistake, right? You can't say it was both unowned once and common property once. You can say that there was a time when everyone had equal claim to it, but some people chose not to make that claim. The fact is, you can't both have ownership of the results of your own labor and also not give ownership results of labor. The reason the Homestead Act required you not just to go over there and say, this is my piece of land, but to actually build a house on it and work it for a couple of years is that it's the labor that gives you the ownership right, ultimately, for something that you're claiming that's unowned and homesteaded. And the exact specifics of that are different for different things. There should be no such requirement for picking up a stick, but at the same time, if I put down my stick and I haven't done anything to it, and I've just been swinging it around, do I really have any more ownership claim to it? Not until I really make it clear that it's mine in some way. I have to put some sort of labor into it. That's the key thing here, is the ownership claims and the property rights issues are ones in which individuals are doing labor. Start with that. Start with that. The problem that you're starting with the fact that there was once this unowned common property, quote unquote. Well, it wasn't common property, it was unowned. But regardless of that, start with the fact that people do labor. Forget the land for a second, because we're already agreeing that there needs to be some constraint on individual ownership of land. But also forget the notion that we can't own land, because obviously individuals have to control pieces of land as though they were owned at least for periods of time. Now note, there are lots of apparatus in place to remove that land from the ownership of a person if they die or whatever. Ownership changes. Ownership changes quite a bit. People sell stuff. Can we have a system in which individuals own land that's fair because everybody had an initial equal shot at accessing the land? Well, of course not. And in fact, some families are going to do better than other families. Some families are going to have more success. Some families are going to prioritize wealth creation and maintenance more than others. The benefit of that for them is they've chosen to apply their labor in that fashion. And because they've chosen to apply that labor in that fashion, they get to keep the benefits of that labor and spend it how they want. The only other alternative, homie, is that everybody gets to fuck everybody all the time. So there's no alternative to actual ownership. What you're saying here is that it might be to the detriment of others that I claim exclusive private ownership of those resources. To the extent that there was a time period in which those things were available to be claimed, you chose not to claim them. Somebody else chose not to claim them. They weren't being used to the benefit of anybody. They were being unused, right? Okay, well, population density is another issue, and that's why I'm opposed to land monopolies, as I've said already. But we're not supposed to be talking about that. We're talking about, instead, the reality of making plausible changes to public policy that actually benefit people. Is it conceivable that we could actually meaningfully change the way the federal government is understood by people such that it's no longer acceptable for statist nonsense to dictate what happens to us? I think it is possible. I think it's possible by doing exactly what I'm doing right now. There are lots of reasons why people think that the thing that they've been ingrained so deeply to believe in and trust in, the state, is necessary in some resembling category, in some way resembling its current state. But it's not. It's absolutely not. It needs to be constrained in the way that I indicate. And it can be if we can all agree on the truth about things. So that means changing the conversation about how we talk about government programs from the people it's going to help to the lies being used to justify violence. We change the conversation to talk about the victims in that government plan instead of the purported beneficiaries. We change the conversation so that it's about the unavoidable, necessarily true mechanism of exploitation of public resources, quote unquote, that is going to happen whenever you have a government program that supposedly helps poor people. The impact on the market is such that it ends up not helping anybody and hurting everybody. Okay, well, as far as the Native Americans go, I'm not saying they didn't have claim to that land. I'm not saying they didn't get fucked. But that's why it's unfair, right? Why is it unfair what happened to the Native Americans? Because it was their land first. See, about property rights? Well, you have to have property rights to understand things. No matter what your point is somebody's getting fucked on property rights. Whether it's not fair that some people own these lands. You're saying these people are getting fucked on property rights. They should have more property. That's what you're saying. They should have more property. But you're saying let's have more property. Let's just divide it up differently. I don't like the way it's divided. I don't like the methods by which we divide it. Listen, you can't steal a few acres without bringing a few polio blankets, all right? I mean, come on. So judgy, so judgmental. Why is it unfair that we gave them polio blankets? Did it violate their rights? Yep. Why is it unfair that we took their land? Because it violated their rights? Yeah. How do we know it's their land? Because we can't describe any issue of fairness without understanding property rights? Yeah. So that's why we can't have any discussions, meaningful discussions, that don't allow, first and foremost, and embrace and acknowledge and recognize the moral legitimacy of property. Will that actually affect meaningful change in society? I hope so. I mean, I hope that the good arguments win. They seem to in public policy. The obvious examples I use most frequently are marijuana legalization and gay marriage. Both those issues are winning the philosophical debate. They're not winning necessarily all across the country in terms of the political fights, but they're winning the philosophical debate. And in fact, the gay marriage issue is basically done being fought out. Gay people can get married now, I believe, or I don't know. I mean, I don't think the state should be involved in marriage at all. But the fact is, if it is, there's an equal protection under the law issue that's unavoidably so. The arguments win the argument. If the argument is public enough, if people are involved enough as a matter of public discourse regarding the argument, it's really difficult for bad arguments to win because they face the scrutiny of the other real good arguments. Alright, well, those are my thoughts about that. I hope that things get better. I'm fighting for, I believe, the good guy side. I've yet to be convinced that I'm not, and I keep waiting to hear good status arguments to convince me. I haven't heard it yet. Some people might accuse me of being a statist because I'm not for the complete abolition of the state, but I am for the constraint of the state and the basic elimination of taxation and the changing of the framing so the state stops trying to do stuff as a general rule. Thanks for watching Talking to People.